Welcome to Sketchy History, the Sketch History podcast, hosted by me, Sam King. This week, my guest is esteemed actor-poet. Do you want to be introduced that way?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, esteemed actress-poet? Actor-poet?
Oh, I'm not fussed.
Okay.
People get really shirty about actor-actress.
They do.
So long as I'm getting paid, I don't mind.
Heard it from the horse's mouth. Here's Hannah Raymond-Cox. Say hello, Hannah, although you've already said it.
Hello.
Good, cool. All right, and today we are talking about Roman Britain, because I felt like it.
Yeah, and when Sam said we're going to be talking about Roman Britain, I went, I don't know anything about Roman Britain. And I spent approximately, 3 hours on Reddit's Ask Historians.
Ooh.
Where I am actually a qualified historian. But it is not my period, so I'm very excited to say what I have learnt.
Hey, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Between that and sort of Heritage England.
Many sources. I, as usual, listened and watched various things. That tends to be how I do research for this programme. Which probably means that everybody listening to this is going to go, oh, well, I could just watch and listen to things, but then it doesn't come out of glorious intelligent mouth.
Yeah, your dulcet tones.
Yes, I think I'll cut me saying glorious intelligent mouth.
No.
Maybe I'm leaving it all in. It's all good content. All right. Cool. So, Roman Britain. Usually we chat a little bit of background first. So, in terms of background about Roman Britain, pretty certain it was Emperor Claudius finally managed to do it after Julius Caesar made an attempt a little earlier towards the end of the Republic. But all he essentially did is land in Kent, have a couple of little fights, and then go, gosh, this is quite difficult, and I'd rather be emperor, so see you, kids.
It's cold and far away.
Mm-hmm. And then Claudius did a bunch of conquering, which I don't think either of us are going to talk about.
No,
So,
we're not.
I'll just sort of cover it in brief. They managed it, despite Boudicca/Boudicca's best attempts for them to not manage it. They did. Chiefly, one of the most impressive things he did that I quite enjoy is to a lot of the tribes that are in southern England to finally sort of nail down that they were like, no, we mean business. He shipped 3 war elephants across from Gaul and just said, do a little bit of march manoeuvres just near this hill fort.
Yep.
Within, I think it was like 2 weeks, the majority of the south of England went, yeah, that's okay, we're done.
I guess...
We don't want any more of these monstrous horses with snakes for faces, thank you very much.
A cursed horse. I guess if you've never seen an elephant, that would be...
It's pretty scary, right?
Disconcerting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a man on top of an animal 3 times the size of the largest thing I've ever seen.
I have to ask, were the elephants sort of brought back to Gaul, or do we not really know the fate of the elephants?
We don't know the fate of the elephants. We do know that they constructed 3 barges specially to carry them from Gaul to Britain.
Well, if they've got the specially constructed barges, you'd think they'd be taking them home.
Yeah. Or maybe they just stayed here. I don't know. Because they're kind of useful to...
3 Gaulish elephants.
Yeah, I know. Gold, you might say.
Oh.
Pun number 1. We're keeping track, listeners. I don't know if we are. Cool.
Cool. Brilliant.
All right. So, what we're both talking about, actually, both of them focus on the northmost of the province of Britannia. So, for those of you that don't know, if I were to have a map, there's usually a bit where I describe a map. It's happened in a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
For no real reason.
It's an audio medium,
medium.
There's a long-running tradition of describing visual things in an audio medium.
So if you were to imagine the British Isles for me, Hannah, can you do that? You picture
1 minute, I'm closing my eyes.
Okay.
Yeah, got it.
Cool. So, all of Cornwall, the south of England where London is, all the way over to East Anglia, sort of as far north of the Humber, that was Britannica Superior. That also included Wales.
Right.
Wales they did not distinguish from Britannica Superior. For those of you that do speak Latin, that's obviously Good Britain. Best Britain, in a way.
Raddest Britain.
Yeah, raddest Britain. Because that was the bit with all of the natural resources that they liked, the relatively flat and fertile land, where they could grow wine, because the climate was slightly different. And obviously Wales had the gold mines. Which they enjoyed. Went to a Welsh gold mine once.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was really interesting. The first section of the mine was Roman. Everything was square.
Square?
Absolutely the entrance that they cut into the mine was a rectangle, sort of as big as I am, So that would be big enough for a Roman man to walk through. But it was all right angles. And that shaft went into the rock quite a long way for about 100 metres or so, with tunnels coming off at right angles. And then you got to the Victorian section of the mine, and it just blasted out into a huge non-conformist crater that just kind of little tunnels just following veins of gold, where they were like, oh, head over there and head over there. And I just think it speaks a lot to that Roman military sort of mindset that they were like, this will be at right angles, we'll cut tunnels at right angles. If we stumble across veins of gold, we'll follow them, as long as they're at a right angle.
I think that's really interesting, and it really speaks to the kind of Roman understanding of what their empire looked like. So from my research, I've found that they're really keen on standardization as much as possible. But that makes sense when you've got a supply chain that reaches all the way into Cumbria and all the way down through Egypt, and everyone is given standard issue stuff. Yeah. If you've not got the discipline to make sure everything is at the same right angle, then it's a bit of a cluster.
It would be a bit of a cluster. You can say fuck. If you want to say fuck. Good. Excellent. Yes, we're going to swear. My grandma only listens to the episodes that don't have swear words in.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sam's grandma.
Oh, I don't think she'll have heard. It's fine.
Yeah. So, that's really interesting. Yeah. Why, Sam, why did they take you to the mines?
Oh, what, when I went to Wales?
Yes.
It was my family's idea of fun.
Right.
It was a little historical trip when I went on a. But yes, that was Britannica Superior, and then above that was Britannica Inferior, which was everything north of the Humber to the border with Caledonia, which was called many things. It was called Caledonia. They did occasionally called it Pictland, and sometimes they called it Scotland, even though the Scoti were an Irish tribe in what they called Hibernica to the west. But, indiscriminate naming of things that are beyond your borders is sort of the Roman way.
Yeah, it's quite literally just barbarians, which, we've all been there.
It's a blanket term.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Now, the reason I described that to you is what we're dealing with today is mostly going to take place at the border between Britannica Inferior and the real north, Scotland, if you will.
Yes.
Because the actual north. Because the Romans made several forays into Scotland, and that's what I'm going to talk about. And Hannah is going to talk about the legendary border that one Emperor Hadrian.
Fan of walls, Hadrian.
Big wall man.
Yeah.
Oh,
no parallels with today.
Yeah. Oh, no, none at all. I can't think of a single person that
you
might be referencing that likes to build a wall in the desert that nobody would ever come across.
Let's get to the sand wall later.
We'll reach the sand wall later.
I want to hear about the northern border.
All right, the northern border. I am going to talk about this through one particular legion. It is the Roman 9th Legion, who were nicknamed Hispania, because when they were formed, that's where they had their first campaign, and they won a lot of glory in Spain. Basically helped conquer Spain with Julius Caesar at the end of the Republic, and then Octavian used them to great effect for the Rhine borderlands during his reign. So obviously we're talking about lifetimes here, but the legion really collected sort of its own mythos and its own culture. So the ninth standard and the 9th in general took a lot of sort of mythic status from their campaigns in Hispania and on the Rhine.
Did you want to be a part of this?
Yeah, the 9th was, but it was more of a baptism of fire type legion. It wasn't one of the ones that stuck around in Italy or in some of the Kushtiya, more civilized part of the empire.
The easy posting.
Yeah, the 9th was really sort of you're the hard boys, and you've come here to do the hard boys job. But yeah, they constructed bridges across the Rhine just to go and fuck with the Germans and then come back again.
To be fair, fucking with the Germans seems to be the Roman way.
They just like to do it from time to time. But what is important is that in AD 43, they took part in Claudius's invasion of Britain. They were under General Aelius Plautius, and they became pretty much the provincial garrison for Britannia Inferior. They helped construct lots of the constructions in York, which was pronounced
Hand it over.
Eboracum, Eboracum, Boracum,
I don't know.
Eboracum, Aboracum.
York.
Anyway, in York they helped construct the Roman fort that was at York, and that was basically where they were garrisoned until they did their various forays into the north. I'm going to talk about one particular attack that they did in AD 82 to 83, and this is where the Romans got as far as the Firth of Forth. Yeah, so the 9th did the big boy work.
That is big boy work.
They popped north of the border and they fought the Picts like absolute gods, and the Picts fought back like absolute gods. Eventually the Picts worked out that pitched battles were just no bueno.
No.
They'd seen the testudo, they'd seen the military lines, they'd had javelins thrown at them, and then legionaries charge at them with discipline that the Picts could only ever dream of achieving. So the Picts did what any force who are on home turf and being pushed do. The result
Guerrilla warfare.
Guerrilla warfare, indeed.
Yeah.
There was one particular night attack which sort of, even the big boys of the 9th were like, oh, we have to stop now because we're all going to die if we stay here. So what happened was one particular night, which Tacitus, who we're going to talk about quite a bit, he's the Roman historian that wrote quite a bit about Britain.
Yep.
He described this. He said he talked to a legionary that was in the 9th, and he described this attack to him. How true it is, we don't know. But this attack did definitely take place, because the moment they turned around.
Sure.
So imagine, if you will, a nicely regimented Roman fort. Everybody's in their tent. There are legionaries watching on the palisades.
So many right angles.
So many right angles. And the Caledonians, they've described them as the Caledonians, and not as the Picts, which is interesting. But suddenly, it's said that they burst upon them as they were terrified in their sleep. And basically, they burst into the camp. Every legionnaire pretty much is asleep. They kill the guard swiftly, and the Caledonians rush in. And it's described as the fort is full to the brim with Scots murdering Romans in their sleep. Some of them are scrambling for their sort of short swords and giving it a fair go, but they are absolutely like
posed.
Man on man, caught with their trousers down.
Mm.
What the general does?
Yes.
And this is insane.
Yeah.
That's the infantry camp that's been swarmed.
Yep.
The cavalry camp is just a little bit sort of to the west of where they are. He sends a signal, or possibly a runner, it's debated, over to the cavalry camp. Everybody mounts up, and they just charge into the fort.
Oh, good.
The Romans see this coming and get out of the way, mostly. The Picts don't, and they get mowed down. And the Caledonians kind of scarper, because suddenly a giant cavalry charge has come.
Yeah.
They were literally saved by the cavalry. And it's then said that the men of the 9th Legion recovered their spirits, sure of their safety, and fought for glory, and pushed the Caledonians back.
Glory or their lives?
I mean, it's easy to say glory when you're talking to a historian after you've stopped doing all this fighting.
Sure.
And then the 9th retreat, and they go back to York and start to build more fortifications there for a while. But this is where it becomes interesting.
Ooh.
After this, we know that the 9th Legion go back to mainland Europe for a bit. They go back to the Netherlands. But then we don't know what their next posting is.
Odd.
Very odd. So they were definitely in the Netherlands, and then they were posted somewhere else. The going theory has often been that they were posted to try and do Scotland again, but massacred.
Right.
Because it went so poorly the first time. And the going theory is that they probably maybe tried to go north of the Firth of Forth, or anything like that, and just vanished.
Having lived north of the Firth of Forth.
Gets cold.
Gets cold, gets inhospitable.
Mm-hmm. And that's just the people.
No. To any of our Scottish listeners, hello.
Hello.
I love you.
Yeah, you're very nice. And you definitely murdered the legions. Although, some people think they might have gone to Germanica.
In which case, the Jones murdered them.
Yes. But either way, death by barbarian sword.
Mm.
But, I think it's very interesting, the makeup of this legion would have been interesting to anybody fighting them, especially the Caledonians. I think that's Because obviously some of the legionnaires might well themselves have been Caledonians.
Absolutely.
If they went north of the Firth of Forth, any prisoners they took, they were likely to say, all right, you have a choice here. Either we kill you and enslave you, or you
Join
can
us.
stand at the back and hand me my spear, and then eventually you can have some of this nice kit, not just be half naked, spinning this stick around. Which you might go, yeah, all right, that's it.
And to be fair, that's like a huge element of how the Roman Empire was so successful.
Because of its expansive nature, that's how it...
There was this real sense that, yeah, if you sign on, then you're one of us, and you have opportunities for advancement. And the Romans had significant success in converting people to the Roman cause and Roman ideology. And when we get to my bit, I suppose, I'll be talking a little bit about how the makeup of the towns and the social sides of things really conducive to allowing for intimate Romans and Britons.
All right, in that case, I think I'll hand over to our sketch actors now. Good luck with that one. Just Men of the Ninth saying that it's bloody cold might be entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. Men of the Ninth encountering the Scots.
Being surprised by ginger hair.
Yeah. Or, if you would like to do an elephant impersonation,
Oh,
I'm not going to say
absolutely. If you could just be the 3 cold Roman elephants that landed in Britain, that would be also phenomenal. Maybe they were having a great time. Maybe they were like, look, it's cold here, but
the biggest thing around?
we're the biggest thing around, I guess.
I don't know.
We're being made to just patrol, but we're not actually having to do any fighting, which is pretty decent.
Could be worse. My cousin was fighting somewhere else, and haven't heard from him in a while. I don't know. This is the job of our actors, not us.
Oh, well, good luck with that, actors, and we'll hand over to you now.
How you doing there, alright?
Yeah.
We're prepared. Do you know what? I'm excited to get some more kilts, I need some more curtains up here.
Yeah, fancy some of those more cold women.
Oh yeah, not a fan of gingers though.
Oh, why not?
No, I don't think they've got souls,
Yeah,
know.
probably not. No. Yeah.
There's a curtain match the carpet.
Hey.
Oh, sorry I'm late. Present and correct, sir.
And who are you then?
I'm a new recruit, sir. Signed on yesterday.
Oh, someone we can wear in, is it?
I see. Look at the shiny boots. Where did you get them?
I got those from Harrods in Rome.
You even...
Mummy brought them for me when she heard I'd signed up.
You ever been to Scotland before?
No, sir, but I've heard it's absolutely spiffing, and you had a smashing time there last year.
Smashing! There were bones smashing, bloods curdling. I lost some good men back there.
That's how
and all you say is it's
sir.
spiffing.
Sorry, sir. Just very enthusiastic to get started.
Well, let's get started then. Tell us what's in your kit bag.
I've got my thermos flask full of tea, some
Tea!
cucumber
We
sandwiches.
don't drink tea, we drink the blood of our enemies.
I say, I haven't tried that, sir, but definitely down for trying that once we get into battle.
Alright, I'm putting on dibs that he's gonna die first.
Nobody's going to take that action. He's definitely a dead man.
Definitely the first one to go.
2 days maximum.
2 days, I say 2 hours.
Tell him what happened last time, Sarge.
Go on, tell him.
Right. Alright, squadron, we've been through a lot. We've seen the wars and we've lost friends. My best friend Tim.
R.I.P.
And my best chef Greg.
R.I.P.
So I'm not having you coming around here saying that it's gonna be easy and... what's this? Spiffing? We don't have time for spiffing. We got time for killing and grating and possibly having some tea. If you don't start backing up your ideas, son, there's a very strong likelihood that some bagpipes are gonna make their way up your backside. Capiche?
Yes, sir.
And we're back.
Hello.
Hello. That was a funny sketch, wasn't it,
That
Hannah?
was hilarious.
Oh, we don't know.
We have no idea.
Could have been terrible. Okay, cool.
Have more faith.
I have lots of faith in whoever ends up. All right, cool. So, Hannah, what are you going to talk to us about?
I'd like to talk about Hadrian's Wall, please.
Nice. Okay.
Give me Hadrian's Wall for 400. Right. So, a little bit about Hadrian before I start going on and on about his wall building and what that meant at the time. So, Hadrian was the emperor of Rome from around 117 AD, 138 AD. So, not a bad run for an emperor of Rome. His family was Spanish, but he grew up in Rome. So if you are going to play Hadrian, intent.
Lisp.
Basically, he didn't love spending a ton of time in Rome. He was constantly travelling across the empire and improving it. And he built Hadrian's Wall, very imaginative naming convention, to secure the empire's northwestern border in the province of Britannia. And what you need to know about Hadrian and the wall thing, before we delve into his wall in Britain, is... Sam, would you like to tell them about the wall in the desert?
Yes, I would. I would like to tell you about. So, as we know, if we picture the Roman Empire, pretty much their southern and eastern borders are arid land at best and the Sahara Desert at worst. Don't know how much you might know about the Sahara Desert, listener, but unless you have quite a lot of camels, it's difficult to cross. Certainly, it would be difficult for any significant armed force to make it from sub-Saharan Africa into Egypt. In fact, I don't think I can think of a single time that that's happened.
Not until we sort of get better at
Tanks.
Technology. And camels, I guess.
And camels, I guess. Improved camels. But certainly...
Mechanized camels.
Mechanized camels. The ultimate weapon. But yeah, in terms of Hadrian's time and any force he might have faced, it wasn't going to happen. But regardless of that, our old mate Hadrian decided that he must build a wall to secure his entire empire. So there are sections still, people reckon, of walls that he made legions erect in the Sahara that were swallowed up by the desert pretty quickly.
I mean, it's just shifting sand.
It's impossible. It's impossible to build anything solid, and he still goes, there needs to be a wall here.
Yeah, and in fact, the wall there and the wall in Britain were constructed of remarkably similar materials. So that's a lot of stone they're schlepping.
For no real
For
reason.
no good reason. Well, the wall he built in Britain was a bit more successful. In fact, it is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is very, very cool. Hey. We love our World Heritage Sites. And effectively, it's a northwestern border wall. And it survived and was used all the way through Anglo-Saxon England, not just Roman Britain, which is really interesting to me, just because I'm a nerd. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about a town called Corbridge, in which there was a bridge.
Core.
God, blimey.
God, blimey, there's a bridge.
Blimey, there's a bridge. And I'm only using this as a sort of framework to describe how the wall worked, who the legionaries were, what Roman Britain looked like at the time. Basically, it's about 2.5 miles south of Hadrian's Wall, which was developed after 160 AD around a base for legionary soldiers. Basically, there had been a bunch of forts on the site built from around 85 AD, which was when it was first invaded, and it was on one of the main routes northwards which crossed the River Tyne. Corbridge became one of only 2 substantial walls, and it was actually a really vibrant urban community. The problem with talking about Roman British history, right, is that we have 2 things that were ever written down about it. And that's Tacitus.
Who's already been mentioned.
Who has been mentioned. A bit more about Tacitus is he was the son-in-law of Agricola, who was the governor of Britain from 77 to 85 AD.
So he may well have had some subconscious and conscious bias.
Yeah, maybe. And then the other guy is a guy called Cassius Dio, who is a 3rd century Greek senator. We're not sure he even went to Britain. So between those things and a lot of archaeologists doing their darndest to interpret what's been going on in Roman Britain,
And cover some gaps.
yeah, we've got a lot of trouble trying to figure things out. But because it's cold and things get preserved quite well in the cold, we've got a lot of good agricultural and archaeological evidence from Corbridge to tell you a little bit more about how it worked. So, who were the legionaries? Well, fundamentally, the people who built the wall. Close your eyes. What does a Roman look like, Sam?
I'm picturing Russell Crowe.
Yeah, Russell Crowe.
No.
You'd do better to picture Idris Elba.
Oh, okay.
Because, in fact, most of the legionaries who were in Britain at the time who were building these walls were North African.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's
They've come a long
culture
way.
shock, isn't it? Yeah, they've come a really long way. And they'd be coming up through southern Britain, where current-day Londinium is, London, and they'd be picking up slaves on the way. So a typical household in Corbridge would be a North African legionary with British slaves to heat his very new...
His toesies.
His toesies, yes. So the Romans brought underfloor heating to Britain. And we actually have evidence of underfloor heating at Corbridge.
Fantastic.
So you'd have wee slaves underneath fanning while the North Africans desperately tried to warm up.
Yeah.
And there's also evidence, especially in places like Bath, which was another Roman settlement, where the British gods and the Roman gods were kind of smushed together. And in Corbridge, they think that there was a temple similar to Bath, which was a Solus Minerva temple, so two gods of like wisdom and learning, which is interesting for a military town. I would think so. Ooh, that was a beep beep from outside.
It was a beep beep. At least it wasn't a Nunu. Or a Nino Nino.
It's true.
Nunu's the Hoover from the Teletubbies, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, great. I'm going to keep this in.
If you hear a mysterious whirring, that's the Tubby Custard machine that we brought on as today's guest. Basically, so Britain actually was profitable, but only because of taxation.
Okay.
So Corbridge is more a sort of defence to say, yeah, we've got Britain.
Than it is
to
keep any sort of valuable resource.
Yeah, because British gold was not comparable to the other gold holdings of the Roman Empire.
That's fair.
What else does Britain have? Lead, tin. Again, things that they can find elsewhere in greater quantities with less difficulty in extracting them.
Yeah.
Wool could have been a thing, but again, because wool's tradable and we don't actually have a ton of evidence that it was used as a method of extracting value from Britain.
In fact, the wool that they got in Britain would probably be most useful for the legionnaires stuck on Hadrian's Wall.
Exactly.
Being cold.
So, having a rough time. Another thing to know about like the legionnaires is that they really, you'd think that Corbridge wouldn't be up to 2,000 people living there, where a Roman settlement is pretty hefty.
That's really big, yeah.
Yeah. And we have records in sort of carved stone graves, basically, that a lot of the slaves that were picked up further south ended up becoming real parts of the family. And we have one example where a North African legionnaire freed his slave, and they got married and had children, and she was buried with all sorts of lovely things, lots of which have decayed. But yeah, so when you close your eyes and think of Corbridge, yes, it's cold and miserable and rainy, but then there is a brightly coloured temple to Solus Minerva, and right round from that is a huge house with underfloor heating.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because we throw our minds into the past, and you definitely, I mean, I think it's a symptom of it's real whitewashed.
Oh, yeah.
But it's interesting that Corbridge was a northern English settlement of mixed-race families.
Absolutely. And we've got that, when the Romans did leave eventually, there were some people who stayed. And that's a really interesting and kind of forgotten part of British history. I thought, hello, Ask Reddit.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for illuminating that for me.
It's a real good one.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to say. Oh, yeah, I have a quote from Tacitus.
Quote
please,
away.
Please may I read Tacitus being a right mean person about Roman Britain. So Tacitus, in his typical cynical wit, basically talks about how they managed to quote-unquote subjugate/enslave the British population. And he's talking about Agricola, his relative. So Agricola gave encouragement and public aid to the buildings of temples, justice, and new houses, praising the energetic and reprimanding the idle. Honourable rivalry got things done rather than compulsion. He likewise provided a liberal education for the sons of the chiefs and encouraged the learning of Latin, which the Britons have a more natural affinity for than the Gauls, who try harder. a liking sprang up for our style of dress, and the toga became fashionable, which, silly, no, wear the wool that you make. It's cold, the toga does not do enough. Anyway, step by step, they were led to things which disposed to vice. The lounge, the bar, the eloquent banquet. In their ignorance, they called this civilization. So
Well done,
Tacitus is a
Tacitus.
bit, Tacitus is a bit of a dick.
Yeah,
Hey.
bit Roman-centric there.
Well, but it's interesting, if you take the spin off of that, you see that people were keen to learn and share information.
Become a part of something bigger, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
as-
they didn't have a
as
ton of
Tacitus,
choice.
Yeah. The boots on the ground as we, they sent the big boy legion there.
Absolutely. I know.
And built big fortifications, as pointed out. Because I think that's the other thing about Hadrian's Wall, isn't it? You say it and we picture what it is today, and you forget that it was a 10-foot high wall
Oh, yeah.
that spanned coast to coast.
And they would tax you if you went. There was a toll to get in and a toll to get out.
Okay.
So if you were a family of on that border and you had people on the
relations.
other side of that border,
Ooh,
that's really rough.
yeah.
Because you may or may not have the thing that Romans would accept as payment.
And I guess there's no passports, there's no...
Nope.
You had a right, as a Roman citizen, you had a right to travel anywhere in the empire, didn't you? If you were a
Absolutely.
citizen. So all those people that were kids of legionnaires and wives of legionnaires, they would have citizenship.
Yeah,
So they could go wherever they're damn well pleased.
absolutely.
They probably still would have had to pay the tax, but I guess legionnaire pays pretty well, so they'd be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you say, if you're a poor farmer,
hmm
family had lived either side of that border for hundreds and hundreds of years. And then
Yeah,
suddenly,
stuffed. Absolutely.
you're just not seeing them again.
And there's the other thing, which is when a ruling takes over, it's kind of a form of colonialism. That area didn't have a ton of the resources Romans expected. So those Roman elegant banquets that Tacitus was talking about, which featured dormice soaked in honey and garum, which is a kind of fish sauce, and, that kind of thing, meant that the local populations found it hard to feed themselves at some point, which is rough. But then again, we have no idea, really, what the local population thought of things. All we can look at is what Tacitus and that Greek guy said about Rome, and try very hard to interpret what's going on. And that's what a bunch of archaeologists are doing. For example, there are these dodecahedral, look like candle holders to me, but definitely aren't candle holders, that are all over Corbridge, and we have no idea what they're for.
So they could be like a religious practice, or they could be
We don't know. They're not...
just a decoration, like a local craftsman
Yeah, but they're...
keeps making them for
That's the
everybody.
thing. They're not in the place which we think is the temple. They're not just in the place which we think is the temple. There was posited that they were made to help you knit gloves, but then some knitters weighed in and went, "This is a very difficult way to knit gloves." No. Other people were like, "Is it a child's toy?" We don't know. Some of the kids are buried with these jars that have a very thin spout, and it's pottery that survived. And some archaeologists were saying, "Oh, is this a way to have milk for the children?" And then someone said, "Well, the spout is too small, if that's the case." So there's all sorts of objects that would give us a clue into what life was like for these people that we just don't know.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. It would be to time travel to those particular towns would be. I visited a Roman settlement in East Anglia while I was at university. It was the second biggest town in Britain at the time. I've walked around its circumference, listener. It healed. But it had a theatre, an amphitheatre. It had a barracks. It had various shops. And it had high walls. And if we're thinking about the close of Roman Britain, so there would have been equally there would have been a thriving population, multicultural, multi-ethnic, possibly.
Yeah.
Again, East Anglia would have had a high military presence because of the Iceni or Iceni, and all the trouble they used to cause.
I just shrugged. I have no idea.
That's fair. But that was Boudica, but her people lived sort of resentment.
Yeah.
Which there would be.
Fair enough.
But this town thrived during the Roman period, and then obviously the Romans leave Britain, and the town eventually became abandoned. When it came to be settled again, nobody went inside the walls.
How interesting.
Everybody, the Anglo-Saxons, set up a town. It was entirely outside the walls of the Roman town. Now, whether that's screw that's Roman and we didn't like them, or it's that's pretty spooky.
The Roman settlement Londinium, which actually had a lot of stone construction, ended up being abandoned for a place about 2 miles down the Thames called Londonwick. Really, really great at naming places. Ancient history, honestly. But they reckon that Londinium was abandoned because unless you look after the stone, it ends up being structurally unsafe to go in. So there are some Roman constructions, things that were built over deliberately. For example, some bridges, aqueducts, the rest of them, which were built to last. But houses and things along those lines were less carefully constructed, from what I understand. And so people would abandon them simply because it's not safe. You'd have a piece of masonry falling on your head, and you'd never know when you could get, So, yes, there's a spooky factor. There's the fuck you got mine factor. But there's also the health and safety.
But then I guess it's interesting as well. It's the health and safety of the places that they lived. But it's interesting that with Hadrian's Wall, that the Anglo-Saxons found that a solid enough sort of place to hold the Scots for hundreds of years.
Absolutely.
And that their military construction, I mean, it's like all those fantasy tropes where there's always a precursor civilization that has technology beyond your understanding.
Oh, yeah.
But that's always drawn from this idea that the Romans marched all over Europe, bringing wonders of the world and people from continents away, which must have been a scary time to live. I mean, what happened? Do we know about Corbridge, whether they stayed or whether they went? Or
we think they packed up and left.
Oh, really? They were just like, well,
yeah.
Let's move on out.
A few families that settled. By the time of the fall of Roman Britain,
which is hundreds of years later than what we've been talking about.
It's Roman. The date you gave me was 77 for its starting. They finished up in around 300 AD, 317.
It's a solid occupation.
Oh yeah, and I think that if you could live somewhere that wasn't freezing and highly taxed, would. And so people, when the Roman garrisons shipped out, went with them. And we don't know what happened. It's this sort of dark period between post-Roman Britain and the Anglo-Saxons. We know that there was a lot of fighting and looting. It's really went, aha, this is our time.
They go up to the wall every day and they knock and they go, anybody home?
Yeah.
Guys, I think they've gone.
Hello? Anybody there? Hello?
They've sent me. I am the smallest picked. He looks behind him. There's just a lot of big ginger men with spears.
Yeah.
They're like, go on, ask again.
Go on, hit it. No. So yeah, we don't know what happens in between those times, but by the time the Anglo-Saxons are fully ensconced, underfloor heating is no more.
Oh.
The toasty tootsies are a thing
are gone.
of the past.
Oh. Well, and on that note, I suppose we'll hand over to our actors for this section. We've given you some material there, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, I hope they come up with theories what the octagonal objects are.
Yeah, who knows? They're deeply, deeply weird. That's and all over, and they survived, which
means they were made to last.
Yeah.
So they must have served.
They're not pottery. They're made of I think it's lead and tin.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
but those are expensive metals at the time as well. So they must have really been for something.
They must have been. Not for knitting.
Not for knitting.
According to the knitters.
According to the professional knitters.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll hand over to them now.
Una, darling, come here.
Yes?
You'll never guess what I've done.
No. Stop it. Don't tease me.
Finished my history of the Roman invasion of Britain.
Oh my God, I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you, darling. So exciting.
Tell me.
I can't wait to get this published.
Oh my God, come here, you.
Thank you.
Someone's getting a big treat tonight.
Oh, you make me so excited when you say things like that. Shall we? I think shall we? Bratica, darling, come here.
What? I'm busy.
Daddy's got something to show you.
Just here. He's got something to show you.
What is it?
Your father, darling, has just finished his account of the Roman invasion of Britain.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Oh, great. Is that it? Can I go back?
No. You don't sound very excited, darling.
Well, I don't know how you're gonna sort of put your spin on it.
Bratica, do not have that attitude to your father.
Thank you,
Shut
darling.
up, you're not my mum. Don't tell me what to do.
Do not
Thank
talk to
God.
her like that. How dare you talk
Thank
to
you,
that stepmother like that? Honestly.
Will you at least have a look at it?
Here you are.
Fine. Right.
Thank you, darling. Thank you.
No, this is just ridiculous. None of this is true.
What do you mean?
What, they love being slaves and getting
do.
no money
It's
and working
true.
all
They
day.
do.
They do.
It's
It's true.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And what, you're saying that they're allergic to the sun?
They
It's
are.
true.
They
There's
are.
no
It's true.
sunlight
It's
in
true.
Britain.
It's
I
true.
asked Uncle Granola.
Agricola. God,
God.
and you're saying that they're cursing all the corn and all the
They
harvest?
do.
They
The
do,
British
they
are
do.
pagans,
It's true.
darling.
It's true.
You just don't bloody water them, you idiot.
Well, I asked Uncle Granola, and he
Yeah,
told me.
he did.
You know,
Agricola.
Oh, please, it's just a pet
honestly,
name.
pet name's been Uncle Granola since I can remember.
Since I can remember.
Well, I don't have a pet name.
Well, I wonder
Because
why.
you're nobody's pet, because nobody likes you, darling.
Dad, how could you say that?
It's just true.
Especially you dump mum for this stupid whore. She's
How dare
half,
you speak to your
she's
stepmother
half
like that?
your age. She doesn't even like you for your... only likes you for your money, not your body. You're so stupid.
That's
Oh, I hate
not
this.
true,
I'm
darling.
going to my room.
Yes, you
Good.
fucking
I
go
think
to-
it's about time we paid a trip to the poisoner. You're going to go the way your mother went.
And we're back again.
Hello.
This is the end of the episode. Thank you very much for coming on, Hannah.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's absolutely no problem. It's been an amazing chat, and I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything to plug before we go?
So, I am a poet and an actor, and I play dragons professionally. In December, my play Polaris is on Albany Theatre, December.
It's great. Go.
Yeah. That's its last outing, I think, for a while. And then on top of that, I am with Adventurers Wanted every month at the Rosemary Branch Theatre, doing live play Dungeons and Dragons, in which I play a cleric whose dad is way cooler than your dad and is a god. So, yeah, Percy Jackson. But
Oh, cool.
Percy Jackson's dad liked him. So, yeah.
Nice. Nice. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty cool. All right, cool. And on that note, that's been another episode of Sketchy History. Thank you very much, all of those of you that have liked and subscribed. That's lovely. I'm very much enjoying doing this, and you are, of course, enabling me by liking and subscribing and telling people that you'll tell other people, which is always good.
Word of mouth. Best form of advertising.
It is. Only form I'm willing to pay for, which is I'm not.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Sam.
That's no problem. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hello, everybody. Just me at the end of the episode. As per usual, I'd like to thank our guest, Hannah Raymond-Cox, our sketch actors, Tara Caple, Edward Barber, and Amanda Urvall Nyrén. God, I hope I pronounced that right. Yes, I'd like to thank you all again for listening and subscribing and sharing. That's the best. As per usual, here comes a little bit of some outtakes. I hope you enjoy them and look forward to next week's episode.
Aware.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't
You
care.
know this is bollocks, but you don't give a shit.
I mean, I promised Uncle Granola, or whatever his name is.
Agricola.
Agricola.
In fact, that can be Tara's line.
What?
Agricola. Every time he says granola, just say Agricola. It's Uncle Agricola.
Darling, it's a pet name.
Agricola.
Uncle Granola's
Nice.
been called Uncle
Agricola.
Granola for years.
Agricola, you Neanderthal.
We haven't
Not a
discovered
word
those
the
yet,
Romans
darling.
would use. That's good, though. I like that.
Was it?
We
I
haven't
don't wanna get it
discovered them
wrong.
yet, darling.
Agricola.
Agricola.
All right.
Stressed.
Of course they do, darling. I mean,
Like,
I asked Uncle Granola. He's there. He's the governor of England, for
Braticus,
goodness
what's
sake.
wrong with you, you Neanderthal? To the plant,
I
Dad.
asked Uncle Granola, and he told me.
Braticus! Oh, fuck.
She kept on saying your name.
I don't know. You said
You said Braticus, like that's you.
Did I say Braticus?
Yeah, you're like, it's Braticus!
I said...
To the sun, darling. I asked Uncle Granola. They don't have any sun in Britain.
Agritica! It's not that, is it?
Agricola.
Was it?
Agricola.
And you said that they're like allergic to the sun and
It's true. I asked Uncle Granola, and they don't have any sunlight in Britain, darling.
Gratica! I
I don't care. I don't care his name. I know it's wrong, but I had nothing else to say.
Do you want me to? I'm going to write it down for you.
I knew it was wrong, but I had
That can
nothing.
go with solid outtake material for this episode.
I've forgotten as well. No, Agricola.
Agricola, you had it.
Amanda is
Agricola.
still getting really close.
Agricola.
Getting-
Agricola. Do you want me to spell it phonetically?
Of course.